Welcome to Positive Parenting Practices on behalf of Lee Summit Cares. I'm Kerri Gray. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, mother of four. I also teach the popular Love and Logic parenting classes, as well as speak on many subjects related to parenting, health, and wellness. Today our topic is what to do when your kids say, "I'm bored." Specifically, we're going to address different perspectives on boredom. Boredom can be an opportunity for us to be very creative. We also know that boredom can signal the need to reevaluate our priorities, to make sure that we're spending our time according to what is important to us. You're going to learn about 3 different parenting styles and the messages that they convey to our kids. You're also going to learn phrases to use in response to "I'm bored." And we're going to discuss a problem-solving guide that helps you to place the ownership for the boredom problem on your kids, while also guiding them to help them come up with a solution that will work for them. And finally, we're going to wrap up with some suggestions from NASA. That's right, astronauts spend a significant amount of time in a confined area in space, and knowing how they manage that from a mental and physical perspective can help provide you with some insight in how to manage boredom in your own home. So let's get started. What are some of the benefits of being bored? Contrary to American culture, being bored or having some downtime is actually an essential component of positive health and well-being. We call this work-life balance. However, if you look at our culture, we know that there's a high mark on being busy. In fact, oftentimes our schedules are filled, and we do the same thing to our children's schedules. If you ask a parent, "Hey, how are you?" oftentimes a common response is, "I'm so busy." Yet, at the end of a tremendously busy week, how many of you really stop and reflect and say, "Wow, that was really fulfilling"? The truth is, not many of us would do that. In fact, we look forward to the days where we can actually have some downtime. Why is this important? Well, another reason is that doctor visits, according to the American Medical Association, about 80% of them can be attributed to some type of stress-related influence. And so it's important that we as parents set this tone and teach our kids how to create a good, positive work-home balance. So how do we do that? Well, one way that we can gain some insight is to look at our particular way of parenting. According to the Love and Logic Institute, parents can be basically looked at from 3 different perspectives. Now, these categories aren't meant to put a parent in their place, but rather to help to describe the types of behaviors that are noted for this type of parenting strategy, as well as to give us a better understanding of how that parenting type influences our children. So let's first start with the helicopter, also known as lawnmower parent. A helicopter parent has a tendency to hover, rescue, and overprotect their kids. Instead of allowing their kids to own and solve problems, they stand between the problem and the child. They actually go and clear the path for the child by preventing them from making mistakes. And helicopter parents are very well-intended parents. We want to protect our kids because we love our kids. But unfortunately, when we step in, hover, rescue, and overprotect, and clear the way for the child, we unconsciously send them the message that they're not capable, the world is a scary place, and they couldn't handle it without us running interference. These are not the types of self-confident messages that we want to give to our kids, but yet we often do that, and we do it unconsciously out of love. Another parenting type is our drill sergeant parent. Now, this parent likes to have a lot of rules and lists. They often step in and do the thinking for the child when the child comes up with a problem. Essentially, they'll solve the problem for the child or tell the child how to solve the problem without having to do any thinking on their own. Then report back and let me know how it goes. The problem with a drill sergeant parent is that the child is being trained unconsciously again to listen to voices outside of their head rather than to develop their internal voice that tells them what is a good idea and what is not a good idea. Just like the helicopter parent, a drill sergeant parent communicates the same messages. You're not capable. The world is a scary place, and you couldn't handle it without me running interference or telling you how to think or feel. Is it any surprise that children who are raised by drill sergeant parents are very susceptible to peer pressure? The reason why they are is because from a very young age, these parents have trained their kids to listen to voices outside of their head rather than their internal voice. So we need to keep that in mind as well. Now, the third type of parenting style is referred to as the consultant parent. And so think of a business consultant. If you were to hire someone in to deal with an issue within your business or maybe to do some work within your home, a business consultant is someone who's going to listen. They're going to provide suggestions and ideas. They're going to engage you in a discussion where they want to understand what your needs are and also understand what your perspective is in solving that problem. Instead of standing in between the child and the problem, a consultant parent is a parent who stands alongside the child. And as we go through this workshop, you're going to get some specific tools for how to stand alongside your children when problems arise, such as being bored. So before we move to our next step, I think it is important to talk a little bit about why parents have a tendency to step in. When we referred to the helicopter parent earlier, we know that a lot of our stepping in is based out of love. No one wants to see or hear their kid is hurting or struggling. It is our natural instinct to want to protect them and keep them safe. We also do it out of love because we love our kids. And let's face it, our kids are a reflection on us. And so if we don't look good, if the kid doesn't look good, we don't look good. And so we don't want to be looked upon in a negative way. And quite frankly, sometimes it's easier just to take care of things myself in the short term. But the reality is that in the long term, it's better for us to invest the time in teaching our kids how to resolve different problems. These are the types of messages that we want to send. We want to stay away from the message that says that you are not capable, you can't do it without me, and the world is a scary place. Instead, we all want our kids to have these messages. I can solve problems. I am smart. I can think before I act. I can be uncomfortable and still persevere. I am confident. This is the type of cognitive scripting that we want our kids to have, especially as they go out into the real world and get into creating a life of their own as they become young adults. So how do we do this? How do we create those self-confident messages? Well, it starts in our response. And so here are some typical responses that would help to boost confidence as we look at the boredom issue as the problem. One parent might say, "Oh, you're bored. I have something for you to clean." All right. Now, the reality is that the child might not be doing a whole lot to contribute to the household. And so maybe it's time to reevaluate the child's contribution and see if there's some things that they can do to pitch in around the house, things that they need to learn how to do so that they can manage their own home someday. If you would like more information on teamwork, please be sure to go back to YouTube and Google the teamwork webinar, and it will provide you more information on how to get your kids contributing. Another idea would be to ask the child, have you been outside yet? In fact, research shows that just being outdoors in green spaces for as little as 10 minutes can improve a person's attitude. Taking the time to be outside at least 10 minutes a day for 6 weeks is shown to reduce anxiety and decrease depression. And also, we know that vitamin D is great for our attitude. So, have you been outside yet is a really good response to I'm bored. Another response is, what have you created today? So keeping our minds stimulated is an important and useful way to deal with boredom. We might ask them, who can you reach out to? We know that connections to other people, that relationships are critical to our health and well-being. Another option would be, what book could you read? There's a wonderful literature out there, and to be able to expose your children to the right books that they really click with is a wonderful way for them to stay intellectually stimulated, but to enjoy some downtime. Another suggestion might be, let's do something together. And this is something that you would provide when you have the time to be able to do that. And especially looking at a situation where maybe your kid has been doing a lot of self-entertaining and has done a nice job keeping themselves busy, and now they just need some time to spend with you. The I'm bored jar in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen is an example of how you can plan for boredom in advance. My daughter, Samantha, did the same thing recently, where she was not feeling bored, but sat down and created a list of different things, different activities that she could do when she's feeling bored. So she's starting to learn to plan in advance. You're also going to notice with these strategies that these are also things that you can do to create and to teach that healthy work-home balance, teaching your kids how to do that themselves. Another suggestion that we have got here from the Love and Logic Institute is how to guide your kids to solve that boredom problem through simple 5-step process. Always when a child comes to you with a problem, it's important that we respond with empathy and understanding. When we look at situations like dealing with COVID-19, our empathy might sound like this. It's hard when you're not able to do the things that you want to do. All right. So first, we're going to meet the kid where they're at and acknowledge their feelings. But then we want self-confident kids, kids who believe they can solve problems. And so our next step is to ask them, what are you going to do? Or what could you do? And by doing so, we place some responsibility on the child and tell them, you're capable of coming up with some ideas. But if your child is truly stuck, it's a good idea to have some ideas at hand so that you can give them some suggestions. And so you might say, would you like to hear some ideas? Or would you like to hear what some other kids have tried? And with this, you can certainly refer back to our previous list that talked about things like getting outdoors, being creative, reaching out to a friend. But I do like to always give kids a not so good scenario first, just so that they have an opportunity to have control. And because a lot of times they will discount the first thing you say anyway. So let's not waste a good one on number one. So to start, you might say, well, you could just sit there and focus on being bored. How would that work out for you? Naturally, the kid's going to say, really, really, Mom? And so that's when you would go on and provide some other ideas. Now, you don't have to provide a billion ideas, but if you provide 2 or 3 ideas, that should be enough to get your kid thinking. Then, after you've provided ideas and talked to them about how will that work, then we might need to provide them with some things that they need. So if a child says, well, I would like to do some crafts, well, do we have these crafts in our house? If we can get out, if it's convenient to get out and go pick some things up, then let's go ahead and get them the items that they need, or we can order them online and do something else until they arrive. Finally, the last step is just to have fun, to tell the kid, to give them the message, you got this, I know that you can solve this problem. That is how we build confidence. So keep in mind that problem-solving model each time your children come to you with a problem, whether it's boredom or anything else. Finally, we're going to wrap up with some tips from NASA. Our friends at NASA, I read an article recently in Forbes magazine that talked about COVID and things that NASA astronauts do in order to keep their mind and their bodies healthy when they're dealing with confinement over a long period of time. One of the suggestions that was given is to see the big picture and set realistic expectations. For example, if we look at COVID, we are basically spent time sheltering in place in order to keep other people healthy. So that's the big picture on why we're doing this. They also recommend staying busy and keeping your mind active. By doing so, they suggest having some sort of proactive schedule for the day, meaning I'm going to get up at a certain time each day, eat my meals at a certain time each day, and go to bed. I'm also going to look at what are some ways that I can keep my mind and my body stimulated. Is there a book I'm going to read? Is there a craft that I need to pick up materials for? But being proactive and planning a flexible schedule where there are some things that you can count on at specific times. The other thing would be to keep your body active. And we talked earlier about getting outdoors and how that boosts our mental health. And so any type of movement is encouraged. Certainly we could go for a walk, have the child bring the dog for a walk, go with a friend for a walk, go for a bike ride, go swimming, go hiking. There's many things that we can do to get our body moving that will help us to increase our sense of well-being. And finally, this one I thought was pretty critical, especially in a small space, is to keep your surroundings clean and comfortable. And so could this be an opportunity for you to unclutter, which will help to de-stress your life? So you might choose to bring your child into their room with 3 big boxes, and one box would be labeled trash. The second box would be labeled keep it, and the third box would be donate or sell. And you can take some time with your child organizing and cleaning out their environment. Getting rid of that clutter is known to reduce stress. So those are some ideas from NASA on how to deal with the boredom issue and stay healthy. Finally, I'm going to wrap up with one last thought. If boredom is tied to motivation and you're finding that you have a very big lack of motivation, and would be more so for older kids and adults such as myself, it's important to reflect on what we're doing with our life to make sure that our compass is straight. It's important to know, what are my passions? What is something that I would do almost for free because I love it that much? What are your strengths? What do you do naturally to near perfection over and over again? Everyone has strengths, and we have strengths in many different areas. And I want to put a disclaimer here that just because something is a strength doesn't mean that you have to do it, all right? You might be very good at something in particular, but it's just really not all that fulfilling for you. And so maybe you need to dig a little bit deeper and reevaluate and find out what some other strengths are. And you can do this through Strength Builder. It's just a wonderful book that you can find online. And there's a lot of resources out there where you can help to identify what your passions and strengths are to make sure that you have your compass on track. The other thing to consider is, what are your priorities? Oftentimes we get sidetracked and we spend a great deal of our time on things that are mundane or not really critical to our priorities. So as you look at how you're spending your time, maybe you just need to realign what you're doing. And finally, perhaps you need to set a new goal. Maybe it's a child who's, getting ready for college. And so they need to think about the classes that they're taking in high school, start evaluating which schools they want to go to, the cost, the size of the school, what the application process is. Or maybe it's an adult who feels like their career has hit kind of a dead end. Is it time to reevaluate a possible change? And if so, would that involve some education, training? Who might I go and talk to about making that career change? And what are some small steps, things that I can start doing today to help reach that goal? These are just some other suggestions for dealing with boredom or even a lack of motivation. So thank you for listening today. If you would like to have some more information on upcoming webinars, be sure to visit the Lee Summit Cares website at lscares.org. And I hope that you will also check out that for our face-to-face classes that will be starting up in the fall of 2020. And I look forward to sharing additional information with you. Have a wonderful day.